Hey everyone, welcome back.
Alright, we're
Actually,
live.
this is the first session that we're having, so there is no welcome back. Um, but this is our first session. And we are basically in this episode, what the format is we're going to talk about, we're going to discuss an Instagram reel with some dating advice that we're going to see if we agree on. We're also going to take a question from the Reddit community. And we're also going to be taking a question from one of our own coaching clients. So my name is Timothy Bray, and the organization that we run is the Art of Approach. It's a coaching group that shows men how to approach women with ease and effortlessness. And I have with me my co-host Will Mulvaney, and he is going to be the one bringing out these questions. I haven't heard these questions yet. I haven't seen any of this material. Will looked it up, and we're going to go into them right away.
Sweet. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how to pull up the Instagram one. If there's a way to share audio or
Mm,
share.
technical difficulties
Let
already.
me see if I can just
Yeah,
play
I
it
don't know if there
through
is
my.
one.
I think I can share my screen. So at least
Okay.
we can watch it together. Um,
So again, we're going to be seeing an Instagram reel from a dating coach, I'm imagining, or somebody in that area. And we're going to take a look at it and talk about it.
okay, here we go. Okay. Let me know when you can see my screen, Tim.
Oh yeah, I can see it. Todd V.
Okay. Todd V, yes. And I will see if we can get the speaker to play it.
And on later kisses as well.
Can
Kiss
you
a
hear
little
anything?
and then pull away first.
Yep.
Like it's absolutely like the most clutch move in all of game, with like hands down. Okay, and this is something girls do all the time. They're always the one that like during the escalation, they're the one stopping it, and it's always as guys, it's very frustrating. Here's another little tip. Anything a girl has ever done that frustrates you, and you're like, ugh, and makes you feel like you don't know if she likes you, number one, don't get reactive in the moment. But number two, later on, be like, that thing she did, that was a really good move. I could do that. All right. How do I learn this? Like girls did this to me. Like they'd kiss and they'd pull away, and I wanted more. Right. On the first kiss and on later kisses as well,
Okay,
kiss a
so
little and then
Okay,
pull away
there we
first.
go. That was the full round.
that was a full
Yeah.
round. So I,
I'm gonna,
yeah, give me your
oh,
first
sorry, go
impression.
ahead, Will. Yeah, so first impression is, yeah, what he's saying makes sense. Now, again, what we're gonna find out, what we're gonna really be discovering in this podcast, everyone, is that a lot of these, these things, they sound like tricks, right? Like the way he's saying it sounds like, oh, you got to try this one thing, and it will change the attraction desire level. But what is really demonstrating in that video is essentially resisting the urge to smother, is what I was getting from it. Because I think, when we're on a date and there is the opportunity for the kiss, we're overwhelmed, and we want the kiss. We want to go with the kiss. We want to go further. We're very much desiring all of that. Um, and so what he's telling you to do in this video is to kiss and then move away to increase the tension. But really, if you're somebody who is very anchored in themselves and in their own power and their own energy, you're going to want to take things slow, and you're really it's really a matter, I think, to me, of savoring the moment is what I get. Instead of like going through a fast food restaurant and just just stuffing your face with greasy food. I think he's really talking about that, is that you're wanting to, like, taste every morsel. You're wanting to be slow with it, because if you're slow with it, you get to enjoy the nuances of the moment. That's essentially what I was getting from that. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, that's great, Tim. I totally agree. It's like if you can get to a point where you don't need to like have it always be going somewhere, where you can just appreciate the kiss in the moment, I think that's the attractive part. Um,
Yeah.
but I especially picked this because of the thing he says in the second part, which is when you when you can remember a time where a girl did something that frustrated you, that's a good thing to use. And I think this is a very interesting motive of for operating in the world of dating. And I don't think it's one that's going to lead to happiness in general and
Mm,
successful connection. If you're
yeah.
trying to frustrate the person that you know that you're attracted to, it creates a weird, you might get success in these kind of measurable ways of like you might get the kisses you want and that kind of thing, but I don't think it's a recipe for long-term success in dating.
Yeah, it seems like a short-term solution,
Yes,
really.
very much.
Um, yeah. And the thing is, if you start playing those games, then you're opening yourself up to the other person to say, "Hey, this is a okay thing to do. It's okay to, try to play these silly games instead of
Right.
just being like straightforward and honest." So,
Yep.
yeah, if you wanna have a relationship where you're playing games, head games, then by all
Go
means
ahead and do it.
practice that. But yeah, to me, I do like the first part, though. I do like how he's saying about talking about the savoring aspect, but he's not telling you, he's not saying that straight up, you know.
No.
He's more so as like some kind of mechanism to get girls to do what you want, but
Right.
really you should be doing this for yourself. You should be savoring the moment for yourself. Don't worry about the other girl.
Yep. Yeah, I think the motivation here is a little off, at least in terms of the way we come at this type of situation. And
Yep.
I do, yeah, I agree. Like, if you can, yeah, if you can find the way that you can enjoy a kiss for what it is, if you're always looking for what's the next thing, you're never gonna really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So finding the way to have this kind of kiss and then pull away and be like that, I'm happy with that moment, and it doesn't have to be
Yes.
anything more. Um,
Yeah. And I,
I
I would
think,
also
yeah,
say it speaks to one of our core tenets of approach, being present, being in the moment. It very much resonates with that, instead of, again, smothering. Um, so yeah, it's something certainly to try to do, just to, but again, do it for yourself. Don't do it to try to manipulate and trick the
right,
girl into liking you.
exactly. And yeah, and it'll come out naturally too. As soon as, you know, if you can work your way up to the point where you're not needy and you're not needing a kiss and you're only doing it because it feels right in the moment, all of a sudden like everything else kind of falls into place. Um,
Absolutely. And something I haven't mentioned yet, this podcast thing, we're going to be figuring this out as it goes. So apologies for the roughness at the beginning for our first episode. But as I am an approach coach, Will is actually one of my clients, and he's now becoming a partner in my organization. But one of the things, Will, and I'm wondering if you can share some of your stories about the kisses. Um, there is a there's there's a particular way that you as a guy can go in for a kiss without going in for the kiss, that will signal the woman that you are open for kissing without actually like jamming your lips onto her lips. And that is, you can actually just lean in a little bit with eye contact, making sure that eye contact is very strong. You can lean in a little bit when that moment is right, when it strikes you, and you can actually lean in a little bit, and then if she moves towards you a little bit, you can continue moving closer. I'm not sure. Did you say that you were able to experiment with that at all
A
yet?
little bit, yeah. Um, and yeah, it is a bit like you're kind of just, it's an invitation almost, where
Yes.
you're not pushing yourself onto her, but you're just kind of opening up the space, for her to, yeah, for her to meet you there.
Absolutely. It's all about invitations. Everything is an invitation. Yeah. Cool. What's up next? Will, we have a
All
Reddit
right.
question, I believe.
Yes, we do. Okay, this was one of the most popular Reddit just topics. And so I'll read it off. How do you deal with the fact that you are expected to approach women while also being told it is inappropriate and creepy at the same time under most circumstances? So let's dissect this and try and give a good answer.
Oh, this is really one of the biggest, yeah, like you said, it's one of the biggest questions that guys have coming into this.
Hmm.
And I know that I certainly felt susceptible to feeling like I would be a creep if I went up and talked to a girl too. I've had those moments where I felt that. I'm sure you
Hmm.
two have, Will, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, the reality of the situation is that, yeah, you will actually come off like a creep if you're really not anchored into your own purpose, your own, I call it integrity of a desire. And integrity of desire is taking the time to thoroughly vet your system about your own, I guess ethical nature around dating. So, we as men, we're very driven towards sex with multiple women. That's kind of comes with our biology in many ways in general. Um, and if we are approaching and talking to a woman with the intention of just wanting to get her into bed, then we can come off like a creep. If we approach them with the fear that we might be that way, even if we're not, we can come off like a creep. If we hide our desires, if we pretend that we're just trying to be friends with them, then we come off like a creep. Essentially, when you're just not really being straightforward, honest, authentic, any of those other times, the women are going to be like, what the heck does this guy want? And why isn't he telling me? So that's why I always coach my clients to lead with their desires, put them up front, make them first and foremost. And Will, curious if you can talk to me a little bit about how you've seen that in your progression about coming straight out with a desire at the beginning. Maybe you can tell folks like how you do it and what that
Yeah.
looks like.
So first, I wanted to say, I think this isn't typically what I'm thinking about when approaching, but if you are looking for, if you are literally looking for sex, I think even then, if you're direct with it, you can come off not as a creep as long as you're very respectful and you're not trying to coerce. Like if you are literally just very open about what you're looking for.
Thank you for making
Um,
that point. That's actually a really good point to make. It's really the concealing of your desire to have sex that
yes.
makes you come off like a creep.
Or if you were to make it clear, but then kind of try to push her in the direction that you want or trap her, whatever, in, you know, that's when it can go very bad. And that's when you become creepy is, yeah, as soon as you get offline with your morals and then with being authentic and open. But yeah, so I think one other thing is
Hmm.
that for guys starting out in this kind of thing, doing approaches, you're gonna probably come off as a creep at some point.
Yeah,
So I think
yeah.
it's important to recognize that you might come off as a creep to someone at some point, and accepting that, and then recognizing, but someone else might think you're an amazing person, and it could go amazing with them. And so if you spend your whole life trying not to come off as a creep, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities.
And also, trying
Um,
not to act like a creep generally means that, or
yes.
generally equates to acting like a creep.
Yeah. It comes
Um,
out exactly.
and another thing that brings up with this is what I talk about in the master class, about the reservations. So when I talk about reservations in my master class, I'm actually referring to it is based around the idea that attraction is not a choice, but there can be reservations that will pop up. Some of those are going to be completely owned by her, um, and those are pre-existing reservations. And then there are other reservations that are, reservations about you. Now, a woman, you could have attraction with a woman could have attraction with you, but if she has a pre-existing reservation, then that can get in the way of the attraction. And I can also imagine that this whole talking about being a creep thing, if you go up and you notice there's an attraction with a woman who's maybe had other guys be creeps to her, because let's just face it, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of guys that just don't know what they're doing. So if she's had that experience, that could also be a pre-existing reservation, and she could paint you with the same brush. Doesn't mean that you're being a creep, doesn't mean that you're hiding your desires, doesn't mean that you're, worried about coming off as a creep, but just by the mere fact that she had those experiences could mean that she might think you are a creep. So that's why we cannot take these rejections personally. We have to really make space in the world, that the world is going to have its own way of operating, and that we only have the only things that we really have control of is how authentic we are, how much integrity we have. Um, are we speaking the truth? Are we expressing our desires? Are we holding ourselves to these high standards? That's really all we can do. The rest is totally up to chance.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all great. And yeah, it's interesting. This question was phrased with, how do you deal with the fact that you are expected to? So it is like a little bit getting down to the root of the problem. Like, how do you deal with that? And so I think, yeah, I think we've answered that. It's
Well,
basically
mhm.
accept that women might think you're a creep, and it doesn't mean you are a creep. Like you said, it can just be reservations that they have because they've been approached, um, and had it go in a negative, or have it take a negative path.
Yeah, and something I'm a really big proponent of is writing these kinds of things down. So writing your integrity of desire, putting it on paper. This is the way that I respect women, that I love women, that I want my relation the way I want my relationships to go, what I value, all those things. Like if you can actually just like get this down on paper, you will be blown away by how clear it is to you and how you can use that going forward as, I don't know, like a constitution maybe, or for yourself.
So how
Um,
do you recommend people use this? Is it like you write it down and then you take it out, read it before you are going out?
yes,
What's your advice there?
I, if you're struggling with this, if this is one of your biggest fears, is coming off like a creep, then yes, when you're going out to make some time to approach, when you're practicing, write it down, and look at it every time you go out, to solidify that you know where you stand in the world. You know what your intentions are. You know that you're out to bring about a better world, a brighter world. You brighten people's days, delight women. So write it down and hold that close to you. Is what I would do.
Okay. Let me ask you for advice on one other thing. Let's say a guy goes and say he's very nervous, and so he kind of, you know, falls back a little. He doesn't have this on the top of his mind, and and he builds up the courage to finally go talk to this girl, and she um, kind of brushes him off, in a way that he's like, oh, she thinks I'm a creep. However that goes. How do you advise people to come off of that and recognize I still have the same desires, I still have the same integrity, just because this one person reacted differently doesn't change who I am? How do you advise in that moment?
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, having that constitution nearby, um, readily accessible to be able to go into. And I remember, Will, that you had a scenario where you were in a grocery store and
Hmm.
somebody, you got like a strange, or maybe, no, maybe you didn't even, you got ignored or something like that. And it hit you hard. You felt the impact of that, but then you went back to your mindset script that we had worked on, and that kind of made you realize where you're at, and made sense of the emotions that were coming in.
Yeah, yeah, and that was your advice, was to make it a widget, put it literally on your phone home screen, and that way it's easily accessible. You don't have to like go dig through your notes. You just like, what do I do? Oh, I go look at it.
Yeah,
And yeah, that was a moment in a Whole Foods. I like kind of gave a compliment as a girl was going by me, and there were like people behind her and behind me, and so I like kept walking. She heard me like as she was already past, and it just felt so awkward and uncomfortable. And
yeah,
just yeah,
yeah.
it wasn't even like a real rejection, but it totally felt like it.
Yeah, and that's another, I mean, that's probably another fear that comes into the creep thing is, oh, is everybody else going to see me look like a creep too? That
Yeah,
public embarrassment is something we've had to work on. Um, but yeah, but you can, but as you saw though, you were able to get back into the mode, once you read that out.
right. Yeah, and sometimes yeah, it just takes that kind of reminder, because yeah, as soon as you feel like you get rejected, it's easy to buy into that and like just get my impulse is to like leave. Like I was in the Whole Foods, and my impulse was like, okay, just get out as quickly as I can, because I
Fight
feel
or
like I've
flight.
been rejected, and I want to just get away.
Yep.
Especially because, like you said, like there were a lot of people around, and so it felt like everyone saw that. And yeah, so
Yeah.
just being able to read something that tells you everything from before is still true. Nothing's
Yes.
different now.
Yeah,
It's
because I mean, if you think about this, this is a practice of emotional resilience. I mean, when you're walking up and talking to a woman, it's an emotional battleground. It feels like in some kind of ways, where you're just getting pinged with emotions left and right. So having something that is set in stone to anchor you back is what really
yep,
works. Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And that's going to make the difference between someone who decides, oh, I'm going to make a change in my life and go learn how to talk to women, and goes out, has a weird interaction, and quits. That's going to be the difference, is just being able to take those emotional variations and keep going despite them.
yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, awesome. Um, all right, so next up is a question from Dylan. So I'll read it off.
Mhm.
What are some good ways to increase the opportunities to approach women in my day-to-day life? Because things like just going out to the park and walking around don't always yield the best opportunities.
Yeah. So I'll give you some of my thoughts, and then you can give me some of yours, Will. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is a question that comes up all the time, all the time. Where do I meet the people, and or where do I meet the women? And if you're in a small town, it's very hard to do that. If you're in a place where there just is an abundance of people, it's really hard. And I remember a while ago there was I'm pretty sure he's still active. He's a sex columnist advice guy called Dan Savage. He has this podcast called the Savage Lovecast. And what he would tell to his crowd, which was a lot of queer and gay folks is that if you're gay and you're in a small town, move to a big city. Because ultimately you just are really going to struggle
Yeah.
with meeting people in small towns. There's just no way really around it. Even if you find places where there's women, you're just going to have a very small a pool to select from. And the name of the game for approaching and dating is the amount of quantity of people that you're able to interview in your dates, essentially, because dates are really kind of like an interview to some degree. So for people in small towns, they need to move to big cities or need to be able to travel to a big city to practice approach and practice meeting women. But once they're in a big city, what they can so Dylan was mentioning the park. We're all from Austin, Texas, and we have a big park with a lot of women, and we've been going out there. I have a meetup group that goes out there, and Dylan's been going to those quite often. And yeah, the park's nice because it's a leisure zone. There's not a lot of task oriented people going about their way. But something I was recommending to Dylan, because he doesn't like to go out to bars, and I've also talked about the fact that I don't think bars are a really great place to meet women, especially if you're drinking. I think I think women by now have well understood that there's like a sixth sense in their mind that if there's a guy that's drunk, they're gonna know that he's up to no good and not really being clear with his intentions. And I think it senses danger to them. Not to say that it doesn't work, but I just try to caution my clients away from doing that. What I was recommending to Dylan was to do what I call coffee shop hopping, to find a area in a city where there's a number of coffee shops nearby, and to set aside a couple of hours to go and explore, get a drink at one coffee shop, do a little bit of work for maybe like 15-20 minutes, then move to the next one, then move to the next one, and practice meeting women in coffee shops. So we're going to be trying that the next time that he ends up going out. I like that idea. And this is like, this just calls to the bigger question, of if you are seeking to meet somebody that is very aligned intentionally with your passion, your purpose, the things you're interested in, your interests in general. um, go to go to take classes in the subject. If it's dance, go to take dance classes. Pottery classes, doing activities that are things you enjoy, and going and doing those activities without the expectation that you're going to meet somebody there, because that ended up holding me back big time. I was just like, oh, what's the point of going to like a pottery class if there's not going to actually be an attractive woman? The thing is, you never know, and it can change day to day. I remember I had somebody from the meetup group who met like this stunning woman at like a D&D board game night, which I thought was so interesting. I would have never thought that super attractive women. Maybe that's just because I'm biased against it. I don't know, but yeah, he found someone in a very unpredictable place. But if you do get comfortable with approach and you do build up your confidence, I mean, really any place is game. If Will's really big in hitting the gym, and he talks to women all the time in the gym. That's a big what do you call it? Like an illusion. It's not an illusion, but it's a misnomer that you can't on women at the gym. Yeah, you can't hit on women at the gym if you're going to be a creep, like we were talking about. But if you're genuine and straightforward and you express your desire, and you compliment them authentically, Will has had tons of successes in that environment. So it can be the gym, the grocery store. I mean, the grocery store is a little more task oriented. of a place where people kind of have a mission that they're trying to do. But Will and I have gone through grocery stores together. We have another meetup group that is essentially that, going to a grocery store to meet and say hi to people in general. But, there really isn't any place that is off limits. As long as it's, as long as it's not overly task oriented, and as long as you're not really making it difficult for people to do the thing that they want to do in that situation, I would say. How do
Yeah.
you feel about that, Will? Do you think I covered most of it there?
Yeah.
Get-
I totally um yeah, that's a great answer. I think the one thing I would say about going, there's kind of two reasons you would go out and approach women, and it's either to get better at approaching women, or it's to actually meet a partner, to find someone that you are attracted to and want to pursue dating with. And I think for guys who are like super anxious about approaching and um, getting to that point, like the point where they are free to approach as they wish, um, they can kind of build their life in that way where they're like getting interests and like going places where there are women. But if they're not really focused on like the practice aspect of it, like learning to just go and approach and be clear with your desires, it's going to take a lot longer for sure. And they might never get over that. So I think for guys starting out, it's important to go out and like approach, like make it your mission. I'm going to talk to this many people today and then make it consistent. Once you get to the point where you feel like you can approach anyone like whenever you want to, then it's like do these things where like you pursue an interest of yours. Like you said, like a pottery, but make sure it's something you're into, because then you're not going there to meet someone. You're going there for this thing, and then you now have this ability where if a beautiful woman ends up at this class, you can go and talk to her. So I think there's like two stages of this, which is gaining the ability to just go and talk to somebody you find attractive, and then actually implementing it in your life where you're meeting a lot of new people.
Yeah, and you brought up a really important point, and that is, if you're wanting to get good at approach, you need to treat it like an experiment. You need to be a scientist. Because if you are, if you're going out there and you're uncomfortable, and for you, your main objective is getting a date, it's going to mess everything up for you, because you're going to have an attachment to an outcome, and that is going to be your source of whether you are successful or not. So, something that, has plagued many of my clients is the fact that when they actually do these in-field coaching calls with me, where I'm on the phone with them while they're going up and talking to women, even though I'm cautioning them against it, I notice that they are very much basing their success as to how successful an interaction goes. But the reality, and this is something that you and I were talking about earlier this week, Will, is that any it doesn't matter how the interactions come out, because again, like, if a woman has pre-existing reservations about how they can be attracted to you, then it's going to go bad, and that's something that you don't have any control over. So if you have a bad interaction with her and you judge it as that being success or failure, then you're just going to be operating off the wrong measurement system, essentially. Like, the main goal of practicing approach is to treat it like an experiment as a scientist, and not judging the way the interaction went, but just judging how many times you're able to do it, and getting the muscles built, so that when you So that as you continue, you just start to do this with a lot less fear and a lot less strain and stress.
So how, I think for a guy who's never approached anyone before, when he does his first one, we've had people like this in the group. He does one, and it doesn't matter what happens. He's gonna come out smiling, right? Because it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Um, but that feeling of like accomplishment just for doing it, I know from my own experience, can wear off pretty quickly. So how do you recommend people kind of reorient their like success metric? Because it's hard not to, become elated when you get a girl's number, or, things go well with her. It's hard not to be like, "Oh, I was successful because of that." How do you recommend guys kind of pull themselves back to earth and be like, "This is what success means to me. This is when I'm."
Yeah. Again, I think that's also just something really good to have in your notepad, on your widget, is to essentially resist astonishment. Um, there was this guy that was talking about a psychedelic trip that he had. I think it was on DMT or something, and the machine elves, or whatever you want to call them, kept telling him to resist astonishment, because essentially astonishment is it's kind of an overwhelm. um and as we see with approaching, if you're going to get super excited about having one approach go really well, then you're essentially setting yourself up for when a bad approach happens to be really devastated. So if you allow your emotions to just kind of fly out of control, then when a bad interaction happens, you're going to be having to deal with that same kind of level of intensity, I think.
Yep, definitely true. The higher the highs, the lower the lows.
Yeah.
Which can be
Again, the
dangerous
main.
in this
I was,
field, because there's the
yeah.
risk that you get so low that you quit, that you just are like, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The main measurement of success is how many approaches can you get in when you're practicing. Once you're good, and this is something else I was talking to Will about, was once you get good and once you get a certain amount of ease around approaching, it's less about the numbers and it's more about um, the level of intention inside of the interactions. It's more about practicing being a particular version, an authentic version of yourself inside of the interactions. But at the beginning, it is about how many times can you do this in a day?
Yeah. Yep. It's like there's the exposure part, which is just getting over your fear, and then there's, yeah, like you compared it to when you start going to the gym, you're probably just going to be doing like some kind of cardio and like full body exercises just to like get yourself in shape, like get out of the bad state you were in. But then once you get to baseline, you can start doing your specific, maybe your bodybuilding, maybe your powerlifting, whatever it
Yes.
is. You pick your thing and you start doing very focused activities to get better. So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You start doing approaches by just getting the numbers in, getting out of your head and into just the mode of doing it.
Yes.
And once you're free there, you can start to actually focus your attention on being more authentic and intentional.
Yep. Yeah. So for people like Dylan, who just bringing it back to his question, if you're in a city, there's women everywhere. Um, there's so many guys that come in the program that are just like, oh, Austin has too many men and not enough women, and that's just absolute garbage. There's women everywhere. Um, they're certainly at coffee shops a lot, and I love that place. Even though there is a lot of task orientation going on, there's also leisure. Um, and something we'll maybe talk about in another podcast is the fear of interrupting. Um, women want to be interrupted, to be told they're beautiful. Beauty needs a witness, as Zan Perion says. Not every woman is going to want to, but there's no way you're going to know if they want to or not. But certainly just for a nice compliment, like you look beautiful today, like who's not going to want to be told that? You
Yep.
know? So coffee shops are great. Coffee shops are, if you can find a cluster, I like that idea a lot. And then there's also, again, intentional meetups, classes, activities, sport, like social sporting. Um, and yeah, I mean, the opportunities are really endless. Is there any other place that I left off that list, Will, that comes to mind for you?
For going out to talk to people?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think just, yeah, I mean, if you're in a very busy area like downtown or the Domain in Austin, just walking around, um, if you want to just do intentional practice.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but it is good in the end to kind of try and build these things into your life to where you're,
Yeah.
working at a coffee shop and then
Yes, I
also
like
having those
that's also a
opportunities.
good point, is building it into your life. You know, if you work at home, make sure that you're very deliberately setting aside a number of days that you work somewhere else. It might not be as comfortable, it may not be as comfy, but do it because the it's weird, like being the social fear of approaching a woman is also connected to your level of social stimulation as well. So if you're somebody that just has like a couple of friends and you guys just like do little things together and you're very introverted or whatever, if you can spend time in a coffee shop a couple times, 2 to 3 times a week and just be around people, you're going to notice that your energy levels change just by the mere fact of being around them. And that does help you get more comfortable with stepping out of your shell and practicing approach. Cool. So I guess
Okay,
that
awesome.
is it. Is that
Those
those
were
are
our
all our
questions for
questions?
the day.
Ooh,
Yeah,
nice.
I liked what you said about um, women, maybe they're working and like you're like, oh, I don't want to bother them. But imagine like you're working yourself and like you're like, oh, this is getting so boring. And then someone comes and like gives you this super nice compliment and maybe like it stays to talk. Like maybe she really wanted a break and you're giving it to her. Um, I think it's good to just kind of think about that kind of thing. Think best case. Think, oh, this woman probably would love if I came and talked to her.
I mean, I can tell you when I've gotten compliments before, they've kind of just like totally brightened my day.
Yeah.
I just could not stop thinking about the fact that somebody said something so nice to me, and it was just like, wow, it really makes you think differently about the world, and we all have the power to do that. Like it's so weird how we just overlook it and take it for granted that we have the power to dramatically brighten people's lives every day, and we just kind of just don't really even consider it. And it's really such a shame. Um, and when you're complimenting in an authentic way, where you're not wanting to take anything from the person, but if you're just honestly just passing it away, it really is just it's so simple. It's so easy to do. It doesn't require anything out of you. And yeah, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Perfect. One other thing that Tim teaches a lot is about working with attachment to outcome, and trying to remove that or detach as much as you can from the outcome. And I think that's a good point with working. If you're going to a coffee shop, build it into your life so that you're working. You're there to work. But then again, you want to have the ability to approach someone if it comes to that. but recognize that the fact of there being women there is an outcome that you are not in control of at all. That's the external world. So you can put yourself in situations where you think you might meet people, but you have to recognize that this is, that's what you control. You don't control if there are going to be women there. So make sure you have something you really want, like you care about that you're working on, you're going to work, and then have the ability to go and talk to a woman if the opportunity arises.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. One thing that I think is really interesting to point out, this is I believe it's called the Edison effect, which is if you ask a favor from someone and they say yes, then they're going to be more likely to allow favors. It seems very pickup artistry, but it actually is a thing. And I think, and really what it comes down to is the fact that I think that at our core, we want, as humans, as being pack animals, I think that we do want to help people. And I think we do want to be of service to people. Um, and so, something that I have tried in the past was to ask for a pretty lady to watch my stuff while I'm gone. And after she says yes and I come back, then I can strike up a little conversation with her. And she, will generally respond, and it generally will be what I used to do a lot, Will, back in my bad old days was because I used to go out drinking and I would have cigarettes. And the way I met so many people was by going up and asking for a cigarette. And I'm kind of bummed I can't do that anymore because I don't do that. But it was incredible the amount of people that I met. I don't recommend any of our listeners to go out starting a cigarette habit, of course, God forbid. But that is another example of that Edison effect, that once you ask for something from somebody to be of service of you, they're more willing to engage and be more sociable to you, because essentially when you're asking something of somebody, you're actually being vulnerable. You're saying, I need something, I need help, can you help me? And that vulnerability opens up the doors to connection. So yeah, it seems like a little tricky thing, like maybe like a little pickup artistry, but honestly I don't think it hurts. But at the core of it is the fact that it does express vulnerability, and that's why it does work.
Yeah, I think there's a way to authentically ask people for favors. Like if you're going to the bathroom and you don't want to have someone
Yeah.
take your stuff, just ask someone to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and yeah, maybe there's like a guy next to you, but maybe there's like a girl a little further away, and
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt to ask her. You don't
No.
have to ask the guy just because he's so close. Ask the girl you're attracted to if she can watch it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Um, Sweet. Do you have anything else, Tim? Anything that's
Boy, I
been
don't
going
think
on that you want to
so.
talk about?
Not at the moment. This is our first podcast, and boy, it's quite a trip. As we're going through it, of course, I'm realizing how we need to reorganize everything, of course. But this is good, and I'm so excited to see what becomes of it, and to see what listeners are wanting to hear more of, and just how we can improve. But eventually, we were like, as time goes on, I'm wanting to open up the phone lines to listeners of the podcast to be able to submit their own questions.
Hmm.
So that's gonna be exciting to get some of those questions in. But I love the fact that we get to explore the standard dating advice that's out there, and then get a little material from Reddit, and then from actual real people. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And I hope everybody who's listening is enjoying it so far and admiring our mistakes and clunkiness. That is
Yeah.
soon to be streamlined into a sleek podcast for all listeners.
Let's hope so. Yeah, yeah. Any like recommendations or um ideas for changing the format would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and excited to do another podcast, and we're going to try to do these weekly. So, um, if you're listening and you have a question, I believe that we're probably going to have, I'm not exactly even sure how we're going to do it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Maybe we'll have like an email link or something like that. It probably is what I'm guessing we will have, that you can submit questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. Thank you so much for being here, y'all. And thank you, Will,
Awesome.
for what am I calling it? For creating the structure to this. A lot of this was Will's idea. So very grateful for you, my friend. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we will see y'all soon.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.